Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Prattam Duhitaram Samrat Tadikshaya Gatavyataha Upaguya cha Bahubhyam Autkantyom Matitashaya. Reading the synonyms now. Pratam, who was given Duhitaram, daughter, Samrat, the emperor, Manu, Tadrakshaya, unto a suitable person, Gatavyataha, relieved of his responsibility, Upaguya, embracing, Cha, and Bahubhyam, with his two arms, Autkantya, Unmatita Ashaya, having an anxious and agitated mind. Translation. Thus relieved of his responsibility by handing over his daughter to a suitable man, Svayambhuva Manu, his his mind agitated by feelings of separation, embraced his affectionate daughter with both his arms. Let me read it again, the translation. Thus relieved of his responsibility by handing over his daughter to a suitable man, Swayambhuva Manu, his mind agitated by feelings of separation, embraced his affectionate daughter with both his arms. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. A father always remains in anxiety until he can hand over his grown up daughter to a suitable boy. A father and a mother's responsibility for children continues until they marry them to suitable spouses. When the father is able to perform that duty, he is relieved of his responsibility. I'm going to read the next verse as well. Ashaknuvam stadviraham munchan baspakalam muhu Ashinchad ambavatseti netrade duhitu shikar. Ashaknuvan, being unable to bear, tat viraham, separation from her, munchan, shedding, baspakalam, tears, munghu, again and again, ashinchat, he drenched, amba, my dear mother, vatsa, my dear daughter, iti, thus, netra uday, by the water from his eyes, duhituh, of his daughter, shikaha, the locks of hair. The translation is, the emperor was unable to bear the separation of his daughter. Therefore, tears poured from his eyes again and again, drenching his daughter's head as he cried, my dear mother, my dear daughter. Purport by Srila Prabhupada Jai. The word Amba is significant. A father sometimes addresses his daughter in affection as mother and sometimes as my darling. The feeling of separation occurs because until the daughter is married, she remains the daughter of the father. But after her marriage, she is no longer claimed as the daughter in the family. She must go to the husband's home. For after marriage, she becomes the property of the husband. According to the Manu Samhita, a woman is never independent. She must remain the property of the father while she is not married, and she must remain the property of the husband until she is elderly and has grown up children of her own age. In old age, when the husband has taken sannyasa and left home, she remains the property of the sons. A woman is always dependent either upon the father, husband, or elderly sons. That will be exhibited in the life of Devahuti. Devahuti's father handed over the responsibility for her to the husband, Kardama Muni. And in the same way, Kardama Muni also left home, giving the responsibility to his son, Kapil Dev. And this narration will describe these events one after another. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Nananjana Shalakya Chakshurmilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna everyone. Thank you for joining us for this morning's discussion. The reading from the third canto, chapter 22, text 24 and 25 of the Srimad Bhagavatam. The chapter is titled The Marriage of Kardama Muni and Devahuti. A little preamble, a little context before we get into it. And again, we've been hearing this, in the previous chapter and then this chapter, over the last few weeks. So it may be a repeat for some, a little review for others, and, a little fresh for folks that are joining us for the first time. I also want to let you know that I have two of my grandkids here who had a sleepover, so they may be stepping in and out. So be prepared. And I'm telling myself also to be expect the unexpected. So I would like for you to bear with me as well. Uh, so going back to where we are in this chapter, just a little context here. So Svayambhuva Manu is the son of Lord Brahma, and Swayambhuva Manu is a Prajapati, right? So his responsibility, his main objective, his KPIs as given by Lord Brahma is to procreate. And as a part of Lord Brahma's role, talking about Lord Brahma here, as the secondary creator, Lord Brahma not only created the Prajapatis, but he also created the saintly personalities. And so Swayambhuva Manu was a Prajapati in that category. And Swayambhuva Manu in turn had two sons, Priyavarta and Uttanapada, and three daughters, Ahuti, Prasuti, and Devahuti. So Ahuti was married to Ruchi, who was also a Prajapati, and Prasuti was married to Daksha, who was also a Prajapati. And here we're talking about Devahuti, where Swayambhuva Manu is offering Devahuti, his third daughter, in marriage to Kardama Muni. Now, Kardama Muni is in the other category. So we have the Prajapatis in one category and the saintly persons, right? The sages, the highly exalted sages. And so Swayambhuva Manu is in that second category, which is all about the exalted um, saintly persons that we're talking about here. So Lord Brahma had instructed Kardama Muni in what he needed to do next. In other words, he had instructed him to also act as a Prajapati, meaning to perform the duties of a Prajapati, even though he was in the second category. Now, Kardama Muni could have refused, but out of sincere reverence for Lord Brahma and for his, due to his affection for Lord Brahma, he agreed to do so. And he agreed to do so on one condition, that at the, you know, after getting married, after, he got to a point where he actually had children, he would leave family life and return to his saintly, life of devotional service, where he was living as a sannyasi, right? So as a sage. And Lord Brahma agreed to that, right? So this was actually, the beginning of the conversation between Kardama Muni and Lord Brahma, where they discussed, the terms and conditions before he got into this. He wanted to be very, very clear. He didn't want to take any risks whatsoever. And so, to that extent, Kardama Muni also embarked on a severe journey of penances for not 1 day or 2 days or a month or two, but for 10,000 years. 10,000 years. Why? Because he did not want to risk anything at all. He was so fixed in his devotional service to Sri Krishna that he wanted to stay fixed even after he was married, even after he went through this, the married life, which can be, quite distracting for most of us. With all the various responsibilities, with all the various pushes and pulls, it can become very, very distracting and overwhelming to a point that one can easily, very easily forget, being in that mood, in that zone of devotion service. So Kardama Muni wanted to avoid that at all costs. He was so fixed in his devotional service, and he was doing this as a favor to Lord Brahma, on Lord Brahma's instruction. So he wanted to avoid falling down. I mean, we've heard so many cases, where, exalted personalities have fallen. Take the example of Vishwamitra, for instance, right? He didn't mean it to happen that way, but he ended up, he ended up, getting caught in a situation which compromised his devotional service. And so for many, 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 many years, Vishwamitra completely, forgot his position and his life, as a saintly person engaged in devotional service, pure devotional service. But instead, he got absorbed and consumed in indulging in his material senses instead, right? So the sensory pleasures of family life kicked in and he was lost until he woke up one day and realized where he was. And then everything changed after that. So basically, Kardama Muni wanted to avoid falling down at any cost. And that's the reason why he embarked on this 10,000 years. And one may, wonder why a saintly person would even, perform penances to ask for something that is material. But in effect, what he was really asking for, these penances, number one, were being performed for Krishna. And he also, the secondly, he was performing these penances with the sole objective of ensuring that he had the shelter and the protection of Krishna. And Krishna did, in fact, give him that shelter because Krishna was so pleased that at the end of these 10,000 years, he actually arrived on Garuda personally to offer benedictions and bless Kardama Muni, with all the protection that he needed. And in doing so, he also mentions, Krishna mentions to Kardama Muni and says, look, Svayambhuva Manu is going to be coming with his wife Shatarupa to your hermitage, and they're going to be bringing, they're going to be offering Devahuti, their daughter, in marriage to you. So please accept it. Accept her, accept the offer. So he gives them a heads up and departs. Sure enough, a little later, Swambhuva Manu and Shatarupa and their retinue, they all arrive at the hermitage of Kardama Muni. And as we read in the previous chapter, in chapter 21, he offers, Kardama Muni receives Swayambhuva Manu, Swayambhuva Manu and Shatrupa very, very favorably, very respectfully, and offers beautiful glorifications and offers, and glorifies Swayambhuva Manu for his beautiful qualities as a king and as a Prajapati. So in this chapter now, Swayambhuva Manu is now in response offering great glorifications of praise to the saintly Muni, Kardama Muni. And in doing so, he also lays it out and says, hey, I'm offering my daughter Devahuti to you. Please accept her as your wife. So this is in this chapter, it is the formal offering of Devahuti by Swayambhuva Manu to Kardama Muni in marriage. So this is where we are, and um, this these two verses that we're reading today are very, very, very specific, though, to the sentiment and the heaviness of the heart of Swayambhuva Manu as a father, not as a Prajapati, not as a Prajapati, because we've been reading about Swayambhuva Manu as a Prajapati. In fact, most of us have known Swayambhuva Manu only as a Prajapati, but here we are getting a little more color, a little more color that from Maitreya Muni, who is describing how the feelings were of Swayambhuva Manu as he, offered Devahuti in marriage to Kardama Muni. Not that he was, expecting any less of Kardama Muni in terms of being the right husband for Devahuti, but more so as a father letting go of his child that he once knew, who's grown into a woman now, and now she is old enough to be married away and start her own life. So there is that heaviness of the heart as a father, and that is being described, in these two verses um, so nicely. And I just wanted to, reflect on that and share some of my own personal experiences being a father, not only being a father, but a father of two lovely daughters, Nityapriya and Shruti, and, you know, share some of the feelings that I went through as I saw them off after they were married. I have two lovely sons-in-law by Krishna's grace, by Guru's grace, both Akhandanam and Mukundar, are such wonderful sons-in-law, and I'm so proud of all of them, and they're like my children still, and will be always. But as a father, I wanted to share the feelings which I couldn't at that point in time. But please bear with me. I know it can be a little difficult, and maybe yeah, let me leave it at that. And I'll also tell you that, so I put it down, I just wrote it down, jotted down a few of my feelings on paper, which I will share with you. Now I will read it so that I'm not messing it up. So please bear with me as I go through that. But these are the feelings that were going through me, were running and rushing through me as I was seeing my daughters go away. And I'd like to share them with you. So here we go. So I'm speaking not only as a father, but also for all of the fathers that are, with the young fathers who have daughters who will be going through this at some point in time, when you will be giving your daughter away in marriage. And these feelings and these emotions will come, and, you will be able to relate it better when you go through it and experience it for yourself. So as the day arrives, the father, and again, I'm talking in general for all you fathers and all of us fathers, as we give our daughters away in marriage. The father stands at the threshold of a new chapter, and I'm going to read it from here. The father stands at the threshold of a new chapter, watching his daughter step into the future with the person she's chosen to share her life with. Now, it's a moment of quiet pride, the kind that swells in the chest like an unspoken promise. He's proud of the woman she's become, the strength and grace she's carried all the way from her childhood to adulthood, from the little girl that he once held in his arms to the woman walking away to a new path in her life. And this is her own path from here on, right? So she's carving out a new future for herself. But beneath the pride, there's a bittersweet ache. The girl that he once tucked into bed, who ran to him for comfort or help, is now leaving. The house, which once echoed with her laughter, will be quieter. His heart feels a little heavier with the awareness that the dynamic between them will change. The dynamic, between the father and the daughter. Things that they used to kid around, things that they used to argue about, things, innocent stories she would tell her father when she would come back from school, that this happened and that happened, the talkative ones and the not so talkative ones who would come and spend time with their fathers. So that dynamic between them will change. That this milestone marks the start of a new life for her, one where the father is no longer the center, he's no longer the central figure. That whole dynamic changes. There's a deep love as well. There's a deep love for her, an unspeakable bond that no marriage, no distance can ever diminish. That love is always going to be there, no matter what. The father and the daughter, the love between them. But there's also a pang of grief. It's an unwelcome reminder of how quickly time passes. She wants, I mean, not she, but he wants the best for her. He wants the best for her, and he always has. And he's content that she's found someone who will cherish and care for her. But still, there's that small voice within him that wants to hold on just a little long to the days when she was just a little girl. That feeling of, can I let go of, that little girl that I once knew? Now she's grown into this woman who's entering a new phase of her life. And yet, amid the sorrow, there's an undeniable sense of joy. Watching her walk away, he knows she's stepping into a future filled with possibilities. And in his heart, there's hope. There's hope. Hope that she will find happiness, love, and fulfillment. His father, I mean, his role as a father may be changing, but the love he feels for her remains constant and unwavering. Now it's a moment of release, both the joy of seeing her embark on a new life and the quiet surrender of the girl he once knew so well. The journey of fatherhood, after all, is never about holding on too tightly, but about knowing when to let go with the faith that she will be all right. So I know that there are many young fathers here in our congregation, some that are even on this call and some that will, hear this later. But my advice to them is please cherish every little banter, every little argument, every little hug. Our daughters are very, very, very precious, and their time with us as little angels is very short, very, very short. If you look at it, it's just, the first 18 to 20, 25 years. And after that, they embark on their own life journey, and it takes them into motherhood, into first of all being a wife, and then into motherhood, and so on. So they have their own responsibilities, and then they have a family of their own. So you may become a Manu next in your next lifetime. Very possible, right? But the feelings of the father will always remain. The feelings as a father to his daughter will always remain. That's never going to change. And the tug of war between responsibility and release, that will always be, never an easy moment. It's always going to be a heart-wrenching moment, even for the toughest of us, you know. So don't hold back those tears. If those tears are coming, let them flow, let them flow. But only after your daughter has left, so the last thought and that she needs to remember, the last sight and the last moment she needs to remember before she gets into that car is, on the one hand, happy that she's going with her husband, her new husband, but also the sadness that she's leaving her family behind. What she needs to remember is, the smile on the faces of her parents, the confidence they have in her as she starts her new life and into this new future of her own. That's what needs to remain. And so don't shed your tears before she leaves, but cry as much as you want afterwards because daughters are precious. Daughters are precious and they will always be precious no matter what. So I'd like to conclude this today's conversation, this discussion. Yeah, Swayambhuva Manu is also a father and he has feelings, he has emotions. And that's the reason why he cries out, saying, "Oh, mother, oh, daughter." So daughters are held in very high respect for a father and for the parents for that matter. And so they're even addressed as a mother, out of respect, out of love by the father. All right. So with that, I'd like to also touch upon there was a question that came up, a few days ago. Um, Varsana Mataji brought up a question that was brought up to her by her thoughtful sons. And this was about how could Kardama Muni, after performing 10,000 years of penance, could be a suitable husband for Devahuti? I mean, that got me thinking as well. And, after reading and rereading some of these texts, even in this chapter for that matter, and we will see that. Um, Kartama Muni, not Kartama, but Swayambhuva Manu, as it is described later in this chapter, is the Manu for this yuga, right? So, yeah, not only Manu, yeah, he is actually, his lifespan is over 71 cycles, yuga cycles. And each yuga cycle, considering the four yugas, the cycle consists of 4.32 million years. 4.32 million years. So Swayambhuva Manu, his lifespan is a minimum of 71 cycles, such cycles. So, I mean, it's extremely, and then it goes into trillions, so to speak, right, of our earthly years. So, if that is the situation, if that is the case, and, as it is said in the scriptures, it is also true that his family also has around about, the same lifespan, his wife and his children and all of that. Because if they were to live only for 100 years, even right now, our life expectancy is probably in the 60s, 70s, at most 80s, right? Anything more than that is going to be a bonus for us. But let's say, even if, Shatarupa, his wife, lived for 100 years, that would be nothing, right? When he was living for millions of years. So, therefore, they, by extension of thought and reasoning, they would also have to have an equally long life. So if they were to have an equally long life, and as we hear from our scriptures, the lifespan in the Satya Yuga especially was extremely long, extremely long. So someone like um, Kardama Muni and would have an extremely long life as well. So performing a penance for 10,000 years, relatively speaking, would be practically nothing. It would be like a drop in the bucket. So those 10,000 years, at the end of it, Kardama Muni was probably in his early 20s, by that calculation. So in that case, he would be a very suitable husband for Devahuti. So that's one way I could, resolve this in my head because it was a paradoxical question, a very, very valid, a very good question, that I found very interesting as well. This is how I understood and understand this. So I could be completely wrong, but this is one explanation that runs through my head. So with that, I'd like to see if there is um, any discussion here. Um, Please feel free to bring up any comments, any questions, any extensions to what I've said, and we can take it from there.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. I mean, I first 15 minutes I missed. So, I mean, when you were talking about cherishing those moments, I mean, it's very hard emotionally, right? I mean, for parents to leave the daughter. So, I mean, in this case, Svayambhuva Manu, right? So, they're coming and handing it over to Kardama Muni, who is living in a forest, and she was a princess. So, I was just thinking about how hard it would be. So,
Absolutely amazing. Yeah. I mean, we hear these, the intricacies of these emotions coming about, even for these exalted personalities. That's the interesting part. That's what makes it so much more relatable. It's not something that is happening out there in the heavens. When we read this, but it is something that we can relate to. You know,
yes,
take the example of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Sachimata, right? For instance, Sachimata was completely devastated when she heard about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, announcing that he's going to take sannyas and that he's going away from her, not just away from Navadvip, but away from her. So as a mother, so the reactions, the emotions that she emotes, as a mother is so real and so relatable. And here, Maitreya Muni is talking about Swayambhuva Manu similarly, about not just being a Prajapati who's up there, being such an elevated soul, who's living for so many millions of years and who's so close to Lord Brahma. He has all the knowledge, but in spite of that, that heart of a father is still there. That heart of the
yes,
father that, he has emotions and he's sharing those emotions, and that's the specialty of reading the Bhagavatam. It just brings out this nectar, this feeling, this genuine feeling that you would otherwise treat it as being something very academic, very very dull, very not mundane by any means, but spiritually very dry, in the sense there is no emotion. It's just one pastime after the other, but nothing else. Krishna, for instance, receiving Sudama. There's so much emotion in just that interaction, say receiving Sudama, and Sudama's, feelings of how he reciprocates with Krishna and Krishna reciprocating over that. Krishna with, all of the gopis and how their interactions, the emotions, and all of these things, I mean, are coming through the Srimad Bhagavatam. We're so fortunate that we're able to get that inside look. Otherwise, it's all about being righteous, all about being, following dharma, being in that zone. But there is the personal aspect which we don't get to see or read or hear from anywhere else. Srimad Bhagavatam is that beautiful source which is bringing this to us in a very, very relatable way, right? So that's the beauty of this. Sorry, I'm a little emotional right now, but
yeah,
I can relate to it, and
yes,
I'm so grateful that Srila Prabhupada has made this accessible to us.
thank you, Prabhu.
I know you have sons, and I don't mean to, and
No, no, no.
I see Mataji also here. She has sons as well, but I'll tell you, they're no less. Sons are sons. They are like pillars. But in this particular, discussion that we had was so specific to daughters, so I focused on daughters, and
Yeah,
daughters
no,
are precious.
yes, definitely. And we were three girls, we are three girls. And so I know from my
Haribol.
parents how it was and how it was for us to, leave them and go. So, yeah. Definitely. I missed most of the class because I'm in the temple, but I'll listen to it later. I did hear that last part, Prabhu. So
Okay.
thank you so
Okay.
much. Nice. Yeah. And I could hear the emotion in your voice for sure.
Hare Krishna. No, it's highly restrained. So thank you. Thank you for bearing with me.
No, I
Yes,
can
it.
absolutely understand. And I, my my father, when he was told at one point, 3 daughters, and he was like, each one of my daughters will be like a son, and in those days he did everything that he could for all his 3 girls. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't very common, um, like English medium convent school and all that, and we were in Shillong.
Ah,
All neighbors were putting girls in the regional language schools and stuff, but my father was like, no, they get the
very
best.
forward thinking.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So,
Awesome.
so definitely I can relate.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that, Mataji. Thank you. And as a daughter, I'm sure, your reciprocation and your feelings for your father are equal. So that bonding is very, very special. Very special.
Yes.
And it's forever. Forever meaning, during this entire lifetime, it's never going to go. You can have your arguments, you can have your moments of disagreements or whatever it is, if there is, but those will just dissipate in no time. It's that underlying love that's always going to be there, that bond.
Yes. Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Hare Krishna. And now we have Sanatan Prem Prabhu with 2 sons getting into this conversation. Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna,
So
thank you.
nice.
YouTube, but I said let me join Zoom. But anyway, thank you so much. Just wanted to appreciate everything you mentioned and say. Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhu. If there's no other discussion, I don't want to hold you back. Enjoy your weekend, and praying that your upcoming week is fun-filled with a lot of Krishna conscious activities. Congratulations on the GoFundMe and all of the good stuff that Sanatan Prem Prabhu, that you've done, and the rest of your team has been doing with you. So it's kudos to all of you for this tremendous task. It's absolutely wonderful and praiseworthy. Thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your week.
Thank you.
Happy
Hare Krishna.
Krishna conscious week ahead.
Yes. Same to everyone. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
Hare Krishna.
Krishna.
Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya vicha patitanam bhavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo. Hare Krishna.